Hello, this is my first video. I will be sharing with you on how to widen columns automatically to the widest of your row without having to manually do that for each column. And the other thing I'm going to show today is how to put data that's in maybe all in one cell into multiple columns to separate it out. So the first thing we will do is you'll notice here that I have first name, last name, email address, and a number. And the email addresses are getting cut off. The first name column is getting is kind of wide. I don't need this much space, and the last name is getting cut off. Now I could manually widen each row or each column to what I need, but that could be time consuming if I have a really big spreadsheet, or I might not. If there's a lot of information down farther in the page, I might not know what the widest part is, and some of my information could still get cut off. So a quick way to do this without having to manually do it and scroll through all your information to see if I'm not cutting anything off is to highlight each of your columns. So you'll click upward up by the letter, and you'll click and drag and highlight all your columns that you want to select. For this instance, I just have the 4 columns, so I selected all 4 columns. And then if you go in between a letter, whether it's A and B or B and C or C and D, it doesn't really matter. I generally choose between A and B because my cursor is generally right there. But you'll want to double click in between those 2 letters. And you'll notice that my cursor changed from like a down arrow or crossbars to a line with 2 arrows pointing in either direction. That's what you want to see. And once you do that, you double click and you'll notice now that my columns have either widened, so I can now see the whole email address, or in the case of the first name, it actually narrowed down, so I'm not wasting extra space. There are times where if I were to have this one over here, you'll notice that that's a really big cell. Now if I were to double click between that, look at what happens. It makes it as wide as that one. So if on your screen you notice that there's a lot of space, but maybe you're missing something farther down. So just scroll down and see if maybe there's another one that is longer. And that's why it's widening it up to that column, to that width. If you don't want it that wide, then you might have to adjust that cell somehow so that it doesn't, or you can just manually bring it in to the width that you want. But I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that width, or put it back at that width that I wanted. And you'll notice I could do that for an individual cell as well, or an individual row as well. So if I didn't want to adjust all of them at once, I could just do one at a time if I wanted to as well. The second part of this video is to demonstrate how you would get these cells here. As you can see, all the information is in one cell. And I didn't want that. I want to have them each separated, kind of like what I have over here. And one thing I could do is I could copy and paste into each individual cell, but that could be very time consuming. So there's a quick way to do that. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just highlight these 3 or these cells that I want. And I'm going to go up to data in my menu here, and I'll go to text to columns. And then I'm going to choose a delimited file because each cell or each row is a little different length. They're not a fixed width. They're not each going to be the same length. So I'm going to choose the delimited file, and then I'll click on the next button. And then you'll notice that there's several different options for delimitors. There's tab, semicolon, comma, space, other. If you were to download your data and open it up as a CSV file, you might often see all your data is combined together into one cell in the row or in the column, and that might not be what you want. You want to separate them out. So this is where you would select the comma as an option because that's what you're delimiting. But in this instance, I just have spaces. So, and you notice down here that when I check the space, you'll notice that in the preview, all my cells and rows are separated out. That's exactly what I want to do. If you didn't see that, then you know that you're not separating it out the correct way. Maybe it's a tab instead of a space. So you just kind of have to play around with that. You'll also notice that you can select multiple options at one time. So you might have something that has a tab and a semicolon or a tab and a comma in the same thing. So you can choose multiple ones. A common one might be actually a comma and a space. But like I said, this one just has a space. So we're just going to choose space and then we'll click next. And then on this page, I generally don't use it a whole lot, but you could format it a little bit differently. You can move where your data is going to get put into. So say you didn't want it in column F, but you actually wanted it in column A. You could change it to A11 and then click finish, and you'll notice that it made a copy of the data. My original data was an F, and it moved it over and made a copy and put it over in column A instead. You do need to be careful that if you have really long data, this one happens to only be 3 columns, and I was over far enough. But if I had put it in, and I wanted to keep my data, if I had put it in, say, column D, it would have overwrote the data that was in column F. So you want to be careful on that. That's it for my video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will be making more of these in the future. If you have any suggestions for future requests, feel free to put them in the comments below. Thanks a lot and have a great day.